Just not getting it.
Welcome everybody out there in podcast land. The Good Times with Good People Company proudly presents the Loft Party Podcast, where it is always about good times, good people, and good talk. Good. Now that you've received your invitation, join us. Grab a cocktail, light a cigar, or whatever you like to smoke. Tell a friend, and welcome to the party. I'm your host and moderator, Rio, and let's introduce today's panel. So we've got our returning champion, that is Chris O'Connor. He is the co-owner of Liquid 9 Broadcast Media. We have got the brothers Grimm, that is Lane and Connor Boland. Kill shit and at will shit. Of course, Dave Elliott, we like to call him Big Dave. He is the owner of C&P Construction. We've got our own personal Brian Massey. He's a market analyst for True Media. The anonymous female, I'm actually literally going down a list out there, ladies and gentlemen, because we have such a full panel today. The anonymous female, because she doesn't want you to know her name, and back after quite a hiatus, Patrick Miller, our in-house hacker. So,
Patrick, good to see you again, buddy.
Yeah, really.
Glad you're here.
It's been a while.
It has been a while. So, on today's episode 41 of the Law Party Podcast, gutting health things and a man with a dream. If you can't guess, we're going to briefly, in quotations, because I know how this panel is, kind of discuss the things that Congress just did to begin the gutting of the Affordable Care Act. And of course, we are going to talk about the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So, where do we want to begin? Well, I guess first...
R.I.P. and I got one too.
Yeah, I just finna say, I guess first we want to start with RIPs, because that's usually what we do. And I just personally, growing up, seeing this person on TV with all of the other colorful people with colorful names, Jimmy Supafly Snooka has passed away, and so I wanted to mention that. Big Dave, you said you had RIP yourself?
I'm working on it.
Okay. All right.
I think it was, I want to say it was Gene Smith. I'm trying to make sure I got his name right. He was the last person to walk on the moon.
Oh. Okay.
All right. So he was a rather interesting man. He's very proud of his country. He got, in his latter years, he had several interviews where he was very befuddled by the current space program.
Okay.
And where it's going. He really, being a proud American and an astronaut, he was very worried that America was becoming a second-class country. And
that's interesting. When do you remember around when you heard the interviews you're talking about?
It was just on the interviews. What I heard was today.
Oh, okay.
Because I believe he passed today.
Oh, okay.
So I actually happened to listen to it on the radio back, and I was trying to get.
Actually, speaking of the space program, it's actually I wasn't going to bring up the box office, but. A few of the people here at the table actually went to see Hidden Figures. And, well, first of all, phenomenal movie, really funny. And one of those subjects that, especially as a black person, you wonder why you never knew this. So basically, very briefly, Hidden Figures is about the women that were the human computers that computed the basically all of the math for the space program to get up until the point of getting John Glenn on the moon. And of course, a lot of those women then became the computer programmers that programmed the NASA's first IBM computer. But the woman who was literally part of the launch group and did that math, she was she's 97 now, and she was with the space program through the space shuttles. So
no. They were Apollo. They were Gemini. Mm-hmm. The three ladies that were the mathematicians they just did a movie about were from the start of the space program.
Yeah, they're from the very start of the space program. Yes. Yeah, so, it was kind of amazing. Just first of all, when you think of NASA, you see all the men kind of behind the consoles, and you don't realize how many women work for NASA, and on top of that, how many women of color work for NASA and as mathematicians. So I thought that was really interesting, and it was good to go to a movie with Brain Mass and see him completely getting a kick out of it, because it's a movie about math.
Cool. I mispronounced it. Gene Cernan, Cernan. All right, he died at 82 years of age. He was the last man to walk on the moon, said it made him belong to the universe. That's how he felt. He said he felt like looking back at the Earth, he could just almost tuck it under his sleeve and bring it back home to show it to everybody.
That's awesome.
When he was up there, I thought that was a cool little quote.
That is. All right, so we, if anybody else, I didn't see anybody else when I was looking today, but if anybody else knows of somebody that podcasters out there might be interested in that path, don't feel shy. You can jump on in. But until then, let's jump right in and talk about Congress putting in that late night work. So they, during the, I want to say, entire 8 years of the Obama presidency,
definitely the last 6.
Definitely the last 6. Congress has tried their very best to pass nothing, basically. But as soon as it seems, as soon as there was a majority rule in the other direction, now they're willing to stay there till 2 o'clock in the morning to pass things. So I thought that was more than interesting. That this is how the next administration is going to start, because it's happening even before the next administration starts. And I was trying my best. I had found a list of all of the things that they changed. I know that that some of the safeguards in the Affordable Care Act, being able to stay on your parents' plan until you're 26. If I'm not mistaken, preconditions. There were several safeguards that were that the first steps of taking those safeguards away was passed.
And I mean, not that you guys care, but contraceptives.
Oh yes.
They want to remove that from being covered.
Absolutely.
No. I fully support y'all having contraceptives.
So how did the
I care very deeply about that.
How did the what?
So this did go all the way to the Supreme Court already. It wasn't
Hobby
that
Lobby
they wanted
case.
to take away.
Oh, I don't
in the
know.
Hobby
We'll have
Lobby
to
case.
look that up.
Yeah, I can't remember what the verdict in that case was. I thought you had a right as an employer, if you could prove you had a moral objection to it, to exclude it from your plan.
That, yes, but I'm talking about right now, what happened during Obama's, it might have actually been the last term of Bush. They made it so that, birth control or contraceptives were covered under your insurance at 100% or very close to that.
Sure.
And they want to, in this repeal, it will no longer be covered at all. Like, you have to pay 100% of whatever birth control you get.
So no insurance company would be allowed to cover contraceptives?
Well, I guess allowed to, or you have they now have the option to say that's a drug we will no longer cover.
Gotcha.
Now, the one thing I've always known is that there are a lot of social services that hand out free birth control.
Well,
Birth control.
you've got Planned Parenthood, who they also want to disband.
Planned Parenthood, one of the good things that they do.
Well,
There are more good things than they do than bad. I mean, honestly.
I will say the problem with, because I do agree, there's a lot of organizations that hand out free birth control. The problem being is that's good for us as men, but as women, being able to get on the pill or something like that.
It's very expensive.
That's where I guess it really would get problematic if it was repealed, because there's a lot of women are on the pill for more reasons than just birth control. So other health reasons, and which is one of the reasons that it's always been problematic to me to have a bunch of guys telling a bunch of girls like what they need. We obviously don't know what they need. We don't have their parts.
On laws. I mean, that argument never holds water because everybody votes on laws. So I get it. I mean, and no offense, but until a woman gets herself pregnant, I feel like guys should have some say in the matter too.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying we should have no say.
I'm talking about it. What I would say is, I bet you start to see the rise of medical, excuses for reason people are going on birth control, or what would be even better is to see the rise of implants and things like that, like Mirenas and stuff like that, which are healthier and more effective anyway. And that'd be nice, and those are covered 100%.
I'd be honest with you. What I'd really like to see is a bunch of girls telling a bunch of boys that should be men, you ain't getting none unless you cover it up.
Fair enough.
Because
okay.
I will always believe,
I
will always believe that we've had a failure in that telling young men, this is your responsibility. Why should it be the woman's responsibility? It should be the man's responsibility. And we have neutered our men to make them believe that, hey, she's on the pill, I'm good. No.
I've never told my son that.
And there's sexual transmitted diseases and everything we got going on nowadays. That's the man's responsibility, and we have failed as a society to stress that point.
Well, the thing is, you teach your children to take care of themselves. It's your responsibility as a man to make sure that you do as much as you can to stay healthy and not, you can't believe that a woman is on the pill. And I'm going to tell you right now, when I got pregnant with my daughter and I was on the pill. So it's not 100% effective.
Nor is a condom.
No, it's not. But
they blow up too. Then you can make little animal shapes out of them. It's kind of cool.
I don't.
They end up in a little elephant. You can dig them and the little reservoir tip becomes an elephant.
No.
It's kind of cool, really. It takes a little practice.
We're not getting into the areas of things that we really cannot solve in the near future.
Mm-hmm.
You give an insurance company the opportunity to take something away, they will.
They will?
I don't care what it is. I mean, hangnail. They say, I'm sorry, no clippers for you. It doesn't matter what it is, whether there's religious ties,
they don't have
or other
to pay
ties,
for
or
it.
failures of society ties. If an insurance company doesn't have to pay for it, they won't.
Well,
I'll throw this out because I think you're about to see something slightly different. So, I know a lot of the Republican Congress wants to do this stuff, at least for what he said about Obamacare and the things that he wants to leave in there and stuff. I don't know that this is a slam dunk that Trump signs off on all this stuff because he could.
You know what? I don't either, to tell you the truth.
And I also think that to a certain degree, if they would allow interstate and not just intrastate insurance, I think you would start seeing things like birth control rating in there just from a competitive standpoint to attract people to be on your plan because the generics are so inexpensive. So it is not an expensive drug to manufacture or make or get. So you would start seeing things like that be differentiators in insurance policies.
My understanding of one of the things, and I've been reading on this, is as an employer, I'm always trying to provide insurance for my employees and myself and my wife. And to get quick to your point, Michelle she has arthritis in her knee. She doesn't have a torn meniscus. She doesn't need surgery. She needed some sods. 2 months from Humana to be able to get these damn shots approved. At one time, it was like $380. She said she paid. We ended up paying $50. But she also got the generic brand, not the good brand. Because Humana has hired a middleman between them and the pharmaceuticals to try to turn around and discourage people from doing anything.
But that's
the doctor was involved. It took phone calls and a myriad and people that didn't speak English and all kinds of stuff. I mean, it was a nightmare. Now, getting back to the idea of kind of where you're coming up at, one of the things that I understood was, number one, the interstate commerce. Number two, being able to form larger groups of people, maybe due to your industry, and that will help drive down costs. Number three, the HSA, because I couldn't fit in on HSA with Obamacare out there because I would have got fined $100 per day per employee, which was insane, because I had HSAs before. They're much better than what's an HRA, which is at the end of the year you have to use all that money, and if you don't, the government gets it. So, that was never a good win for my employees. The idea is to be able to roll it over and build that fund so that they
why
do get a
would
little
you get
older.
fined for that? Because we have an HSA and a PPO option. PPO and an HSA option.
As a small businessman, if I was putting in our HSA, I was going to be fined.
So it depends on the size of your business.
Yes, this was
Gotcha.
under 50, and this is where they were targeting. Believe me, I got targeted in a lot of ways. We will hopefully have a little bit better business environment as far as a lot of things going, especially in the construction industry. We are 25% of a house cost right now is due to regulation. 25%. I just read that this morning.
So my understanding is, if you're an insurance company, you do not get to deal directly with drug manufacturers to set the price. And that, I know, is one of the things that Trump proposed changing, was to allow them to deal directly with Johnson & Johnson and, those GlaxoSmithKline, all those people to negotiate direct
Why did they
pricing.
put that structure in place?
I think it's very similar to the way that alcohol is done. There was for a long time, there was an abuse of just, they were in collusion together, so
what's to stop that from happening again?
Nothing. But what I think that you would see is that if you would literally just allow the ability to sell across state lines, imagine being Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Detroit, and you're dealing with insanely high costs. It'd be hard to turn a profit there, but all of a sudden you have the ability to sell in Salt Lake City. Well, then great. Then you can start getting some true competition. Because now
Capitalism is a good thing when it's unfettered.
It can be and it can't be. Again, you can certainly find yourself back in a world of collusion between insurance.
There has to be some regulation, but if you have
the
overall
response
general
was to have
competition,
middlemen who negotiated prices,
right?
And it's the same. It happens in the liquor industry all the time. Like if you're a manufacturer, you cannot sell your product. You have to go through a licensed distributor. And I believe that's the same way with medicine.
So I was reading something and it was saying that. I haven't been able to look at the breakdown of the numbers, but I wanted to ask the Brain Mass what he thought. It was saying that what Congress just did, what the measures they just did, will add $9 trillion to our debt over the next decade.
Which they just said they weren't ever going to allow the debt ceiling to be raised, and now they're going to raise it.
Well, that's with the assumption that you don't make offsetting cuts, which you would think that was also part of the plan.
What are they going to cut, though?
Well, dude, I don't know.
Well, I'm sure that it's going to be.
Guarantee you it'll be a lot of social services.
Once again, things that a lot of people depend on.
Yeah.
But also, I think what really needs to happen in federal government more than any place else, we've seen it happen in state governments and other places, is you have redundancy. Massive redundancy. And so to go in and streamline government is not going to be a bad thing. It's a better use of our money. It's a better use of our personnel and our time. Because you got many programs that basically do the same damn thing in different places.
Sure.
No, I agree with that. I mean, that's what You see in businesses, competition.
Good business.
You do, but who decides on that? The people
Exactly.
that their jobs are going to be on the line.
Well, that's because
Everybody's
government's
job
gotten
is
so
always on the
bloated.
line. And I would also tell you the other big thing that they have proposed that I think would pay for a lot of this is to allow corporations to repatriate their money from overseas at a lower tax rate. And that is how they plan so far. That's what the Pelicans have put out as a way to bring money back into the States.
Well, let's take for a small example, because I'm a simple man. I think I got all kinds of business coming at me. I'm going to go out and hire 80 employees. I've overbloated my business. I'm taking too much money here. I'm taking too many vacations. All of a sudden, boom, it hits me. I've screwed up here. My foresight has been horrible. Everything's been short-term vision. I'm going to have to lay off 25 people. Does it make me an asshole? Somewhat.
I mean,
Because
you should have better planning.
because I overdid things. Now I got to lay people off. This make it even smaller. I got 40 guys like I did in the recession, or 45. When we got into the recession, I had to lay off 5 or 6 of them. That hurt. I tried to get them people back to work as fast as possible.
Yeah.
And I've actually lowered my unemployment by half just this year on my rates. So if we scream like government, you are going to have to lay people off. People will lose their jobs. But they can also go into other sectors and go to work. That's where hopefully if business picks up and the economy's a little bit better, they can find places in the private sector because they are already interacting with private sector companies most of the time. So, it's much like when a guy gets out of the military and he knows what the defense companies out there, they know where they got a chance to go to work at. Because a lot of them do that. In fact, when Lane was here, our buddy has done exactly that. Paul out in Baltimore. He's got a good job. And quite frankly, so does Amanda. She's out of work now, but she will go back to work in something that's associated with government in the private sector. So these type of things can happen, and I don't see it as doomsday. I see it as something that might be necessary.
Listen, I think the one to drop kids being able to stay on their parents' insurance is ridiculous. And I think the insurance companies wouldn't even want that either. I mean, they're the least risky category that you can have. And the other option is they're the first people to drop insurance when they have to start paying for it. So I think if I'm an insurance company, I'm begging to not have that one repealed. Leave that.
Because they're offsetting costs.
Absolutely. That's the entire thing you got to be looking for now if you're an insurance company's offsetting costs.
The insurance companies stepped on their own selves with Obamacare. They thought they thought a lot of young people were going to sign up and they would have a windfall of money. They ended up losing money because opposite happened. I don't think Obamacare is totally broke. I think I think if they're really smart, and hopefully they are, and that they have some vision, which is always the scary part, as we are dealing with elected officials who tend to do what they want to do, not what is best for the country. And hopefully we'll have a change.
Yeah.
But that they will turn around and take out some of the parts that don't work very well.
Which is what I kind of always
I think they may try to do that. I don't see that they're going. I don't think there's a popular opinion to turn everything completely over and come up with 100% new plan. Don't see it happen.
No, I do think that there are parts of the plan that are clunky and just don't work well, and it's possible to remove some things. My fear, and I think the fear of a lot of people who need and rely on what they've gotten from the Affordable Care Act is that that the Republican Party hated it to the point of just repealing it. Then what happens to them? But I think at this point, once you've had 20 million extra people have insurance,
You got to start dealing with the reality.
yeah, you can't just snatch the rug from under them. You have to figure out how to keep them covered, but more efficiently. more cost effectively. And,
Bingo.
And I'm okay with that.
Make it work.
And even the President Obama, he said, if you can come up with a plan that is better, I will back it.
He had plans that were better. That he
Well,
ignored.
but
He didn't
but I don't
Yes,
think
he did. And
Well-
I'll give you one of the biggest examples. And if you just think in terms of pure politics, who's one of the biggest lobbies of the Democratic Party? That is the Bar Association and the trial lawyers. And they refuse to put tort reform in as part of the plan.
I think there were a lot of concessions that he gave that he shouldn't have.
There were three major ones that people wanted. Tort reform being a huge one because that drives up the cost of medicine in this country more than anything else out there.
And Trump has said one of the things he's going to go after is Big Pharma. The negotiation process with Big Pharma.
Well, Trump says a lot of things that we'll see.
Has he got in office to give a try?
Well, that's what I was trying to say. I guess we'll see after Friday.
Right.
Yeah. So you've been quiet, Connor.
I just feel very woefully unprepared for this half of the conversation because let's put it this way: when it comes to insurance, I'm still double covered by my mom, my dad, and this is honestly the kind of thing that I was putting off worrying about till about 26.
Okay.
Got no dog in the fight yet.
Exactly. That's okay. That's okay.
You're just listening
What I have to worry about.
But at 27, there will be a bulldog on your ass.
Hey,
I promise you.
which God bless is one of the things that the Affordable Care Act gave you.
26 was a
the
good law.
ability to stay on to 26. So,
And it's something that they want to keep in the law.
yeah, well,
Everybody wants
No,
they were saying that was one of the things that they wanted
that's
to.
one of the things they're trying to
were-
repeal.
That-
Yes, it is.
That
It's
and just
listed.
to
I know
say,
that it is. I think that's one that's universally.
I don't think
pretty
it's
fond on
going
both
to.
sides.
I don't think that one will stick. But I do know that was one of the things that they put forward that they
I'll
wanted
put
to
more pro
repeal.
than negative against it. Let's put it
Yeah,
that way.
yeah.
The other thing that I do love that I just find when people bastardize history, and I'm a history buff.
Yeah.
So I'm just on Huffington Post, which I love, but
Did you say
protecting
the Huffington Post?
getting universal health insurance in this country has been a long time Democratic Party goal going back to the 1940s. Actually, it was a Republican plan that Theodore Roosevelt first put forward as a progressive back in 1912 when he ran against Taft. So it was started out as a Republican goal, and then it was just adopted by
What has it been?
his
Seven or
FDR.
presidents have at least made some attempt at it, and it just so happens that Obama was the one that actually got something done. Now, like I say, I don't think it was perfect, but I don't know if progress ever is perfect. I think you make the progress you can make today, and then you make the progress you can make tomorrow. Of course, unless you're Patrick and you hack the thing and you take the whole thing down
Immediately.
Well, then you own it. You pass it, you own it.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you love to have that contract to build that system? That would have been fun.
I'd like the contract to break it and show them what the problems are.
All right.
Yeah, I think there seems to be this conception that I would argue misconception that you're going to put a national program in a nation of our size with our degree of complexity, history with the states and states versus Fed laws, just the overall degree of administrative complexity to the program that was put in place, whether you like it or not, and have any expectation that it would not require refinements. I think that's an absolute misunderstanding of how the system works.
Yeah.
You
I
have
would
to
agree
put something
with
in
that.
place with an expectation that it will need
That
to
you
be
will need to be refined.
and
Yeah.
it seems to be an argument as though what was put in place was either perfect or imperfect. You should assume that anything on this scale is going to be imperfect.
I don't
It's just a
disagree
default
with
assumption.
that, but when you know ahead of time what the imperfections are going to be, then
It
the
shows you the
imperfections
areas
are only
that just
there.
prioritizes the areas you need to monitor closely.
I would agree, but when the imperfections are only there because that is your base lobby, it makes it a little bit of a bummer.
Well,
And that's true of all
classic
politics
cases. You
across
got to
the
start
board.
somewhere.
I'm not
Yeah.
disagreeing, but those were three obvious areas that they could have done that everybody you would have universally agreed
Right.
with if you weren't protecting your voter base.
Well, everyone is. They all are.
Well,
I
well,
like that, but it takes
yeah.
away from the idea of, oh man, here I'm at, trying to help people out with this great universal coverage.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a fine start, but three things could have made this law pretty passable for almost everybody. And it was a bummer that it never happened.
Yeah, you know, I was looking at something that was talking about, you know, the legacy or whatever of the Obama administration, and they were saying that, you know, the kind of the sad thing and the thing that has made, you know, his legacy possibly tenuous is that literally while he and Michelle were dancing their dances at the inaugural balls, the Republicans met at a restaurant down the street and made the decision that day whether or not they were going to cooperate with this president, because and it wasn't, and well, what the excuses weren't racial, but I'll just say the word but what the excuses were that they had lost the election so handily that they needed to figure out how they were going to get back in power. And they figured the best way to get back in power was obstruct.
And are we not seeing the same thing today on the opposite
Yeah, we're
side?
seeing the same
And
thing.
Well, yeah.
I'll be fair. I don't know that that's entirely accurate. For a very long time, Obama and Boehner had a fairly good relationship, and they actually struck some pretty good deals.
What the funny thing is, actually, Boehner was part of the interview, and he said he was at the dinner, but he was even bucking his party.
Yeah.
Try to have some concessions.
He was a leader. He was supposed to do that.
In
Once
the
you had
thing
the
that
Tea
we
Party
watched,
split.
it was the Tea Party that started
Once you had the
it.
Tea Party split, you could not.
Well, and what did Boehner say? He said,
We must have watched the same show.
a man without a cause without a leader or something is just a man taking a walk.
Oh, yeah.
And he said, well, I better get out and lead.
Yeah.
And try to unify the party again, and it just didn't work.
Yeah.
I mean, those guys got along really well until it came to a point where there was just nothing that could be done. You had Mitch McConnell and those guys step in and ruin every deal
It was
that
Rubio
they
that
had
caught
made.
it, and Cruz.
I would agree, but Mitch McConnell is
No, you're right.
no,
You're right.
Sentence.
But
And
it was
and
Cruz
isn't
and
Harry Reid of the same
Rubio
cloth?
that started the whole.
I would agree, but I mean, like, and I don't think Obama did himself any favors by saying there's consequences to winning. You know?
Yeah.
He didn't make himself a lot of friends when saying shit like that. So, you know, it cuts both ways, I guess. I just think they're all a bunch of morons, and I just hope nothing gets done ever. So, that's my favorite thing in the world.
The system is actually designed to not allow sweeping change.
Yes.
It was intentionally designed like that, and that's a good thing, so that we
It
don't.
keeps us going into chaos.
It's actually why I'm slightly alarmed right now.
Because it looks
Too
like
much
they're
change
making
for the
sweeping
system.
change.
When you have the presidency, you have the House, and you have the Senate, and you also have
At the
Supreme
court.
two
Court.
potential
Seats on the court, yeah. I mean,
that's an alarming kind of thing.
This is a little thing that kind of gets off the conversation a little bit, but there was one thing I noticed as I was trying to get insurance for the guys, and someone were looking at Obamacare, was that they didn't take insurance for me, or they didn't get on the exchange. They just got fined $600 and some, and they still didn't have insurance. I thought that was the most asinine damn thing that I ever saw. If you're going to make them get on it, make them get on it, but don't sit there and tell them, well, you're not getting on, so you got to pay for it in one form or another. We're going to tax you this $635, and if you don't do it next year, it could be $1,000. I understand it's an incentive to try to get them on. These guys don't have the money to get on. You're just taking money out of their pocket
I have said
because
this
they're poor
before.
construction workers.
I believe this 1,000%, and I will stick with it. I will use my, I guess, former sister-in-law as an example of somebody who couldn't possibly afford insurance because it was way too expensive. But she was always able to find the money for a plane ticket to go see her boyfriend in Colorado. She was able to find the money for cable TV, and I don't know a single kid who can't pick up their bar tab. And they do it pretty regularly. I'm like, it was always just a matter.
But I'm paying some guy
choice.
$14 an hour. He's got a couple of kids and a wife that stays at home with the kids. They live in some crappy old apartment. they're never going to be able to afford it.
But they didn't qualify for any of the subsidies on the
Well, they
insurance?
would, but they're not going to go that far
Well, then
because
it's an issue.
you have to understand who they are. You know, a lot of these guys never even got a high school education. You know, so they have a certain amount of ignorance. They can't turn around and say, you know, well, I should probably go do this, and then I can get a supplement. Then I got everybody covered. I got my children covered. I got my wife covered. I got myself covered. Everything's good. Where most of the time, if they were going to get a plan through me, they couldn't afford to insure their kids and wife anyway. They just got a plan through me because I put $100 a month towards it. And if they're young enough, they aren't paying hardly anything. They're paying $15, $16, $17 a week. If they're like 21, 22, 18, 19,
Yeah, we pay 100% of
they don't pay hardly.
but
I'd love to pay 100%,
skyrockets the premiums.
but I'm already paying. I'm paying $2,000 a month just putting $100 per man on.
Sure.
Because I got 20 people out of 42 signed up.
Sure. It's a big topic. So.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
I wish it wasn't attached to jobs. Like,
Yeah.
it sucks.
But that was one of the things that employers did to attract good candidates. I mean, that's why people then became too associated with this is now a right through an employer to do that.
Right.
You know, so that was companies doing it around.
So, this of course is a topic that's got way more meat on the bone than we got time to talk about it.
Well, it's an evolving topic, and we'll be able to.
Oh yeah,
It's going to be very interesting the next 2 or 3 months to see how this evolves out.
absolutely.
And it'll be an interesting topic to come back many times to.
Should come back to it after our OJ one.
Yes, actually, I think we should come back to it. OJ one. Absolutely. All right. So I noticed this week Trump and Twitter. I
You
just
noticed it this week?
It was very poignant.
I just want him to
Put it away.
put it away.
Put it
Just-
away.
just
Please,
stop.
please, please
okay.
put it away.
Yeah, just stop.
Now,
Just
wait,
stop.
wait.
Makes my head
Hold on.
hurt.
There is an absolute positive side of this.
Yes.
And it's all of the profoundly hilarious parody accounts that have come out as a result. The humor in my Twitter feed is now off the charts, making fun of his tweets. So I say let him go and keep me laughing because I'm loving it. It brightens my day.
Yeah.
They are stupid.
I would.
Patrick, I don't disagree with that.
It's hilarious.
I get it on several things that I read every
the
day too,
parodies
where it's
are
just kind of like,
are
holy
too funny.
crap.
I mean, even have like Mark Hamill doing them in the Joker voice.
I know.
There's an endless array of hilarious.
I forget that he was a Joker
Yeah.
in the
Killing
Batman cartoon. Yeah. And the killing and the was it the Killing
I
Joke?
just still
Killing
like
Joke was
Saturday
yeah.
Night Live.
Yeah, all of it. I mean,
Yeah,
all of
so-
it. It's just an endless supply of humor. That's how I
Yeah.
see it.
What I will say about is what I'm curious about is will the White House be relaxing its rules about the president having his own Twitter?
You mean the Golden Towers?
Yeah, I mean because right now,
Well,
you
they
know,
didn't let Obama do it.
yeah, right now there is a POTUS Twitter,
Right.
Yeah.
and so I'm wondering.
And it gets turned over. To
Yeah, well, but he is now not the one doing the tweets. You know, it's some staffer. So I'm wondering, will we suddenly get a calmer, gentler Twitter because now
This is
a
what
White
I'm gonna
House
say. No, this is
will
what's
a White House staffer's doing it, or will he say no? I want to say this,
Obama said that.
and now you'll have POTUS Twitter sounding ridiculous.
I don't see that you can stop him.
I do.
You think?
Yeah.
You
They
think the
did
staff
without-
will be able to clamp down
I think
on
it
it?
has nothing to do
It-
with him having a Twitter account and the things he says on his Twitter account. It has everything to do with the fact that the president has to carry specific technology and is not allowed
Right,
to carry any other
exactly.
technology.
Right.
That's
Oh,
what I
well
was
put,
gonna
Patrick.
say.
I
Yeah.
didn't consider that. You're
Yeah.
right.
Well,
Very
and that's what
specific
Obama
technology.
said. His BlackBerry
He
has
was-
email. Period.
Yeah, that's
he
the only-
can't
yeah.
text.
Well,
he
he
can't
can't make a
receive
phone call. Yeah.
He only gets text-based email as well. There can be
Yeah.
no content. It can be just
Right.
purely letters. That's
Yeah.
it. That's all. It
And
can
so-
come.
Well,
HTML
HTML can be
Oh,
you can
exactly.
put
So
viruses in, right?
he gets text-based email. It looks like text messages. It's hard to read. It's kludgy. but that is all the president is allowed to carry
That'll
for
drive
very
that-
obvious and legitimate reasons.
Yeah.
That'll drive that man totally crazy.
Yeah, which
It
is
will.
Crazier.
which actually, knowing that, I'm looking forward to
seeing
to
the
his
change.
looking forward to his meltdowns because he can't Twitter rant. Speaking of Twitter rant, so his Twitter rant with Congressman Lewis is it's disturbing on a lot of levels. One, the fact that he's even engaging in Twitter rants is kind of ridiculous. You've been elected to the presidency. Just stop. Two, that you're Twitter ranting with probably the most respected living person from the civil rights era.
With Martin Luther.
Just stop. Just 'cause you. And this is the problem. So if so many people out there in the country think you're racist, and you're Twitter ranting with somebody that respected from civil rights movement, even if you're not racist, you look real racist.
Yeah,
So you should stop. You should just
Well, here's my major problem with it.
yes.
Because he has said that he's going to work very hard to help out the urban areas to bring them forward. Now, he has said this.
He has said it.
He has said this.
I don't believe that.
But he
faster than I
has
can
an
throw you
excellent
across this room.
We had a
opportunity.
prayer session today with Martin Luther King III.
You did.
Yeah,
He did.
He does have an opportunity
He did.
to extend a hand
He does. He does.
because he stated that he would. And there has been 50 years of a lot of failed policy.
Very true. But see,
These are true facts that it's time for a change in the urban areas.
very
Now, can they have the true vision to go back? I spent a good part of the day, it was the afternoon here after I got home, reading Dr. King's 1966 letter from the Birmingham jail. Mm-hmm. And if anybody's ever read that, you should read that.
true. Profound.
The man is profound.
Oh, profound
He's profound in his literary. He's profound in his knowledge. He's profound in his philosophy. Mm-hmm. It's a profound letter, and it should be required reading in all schools, in my opinion. All right, because there's a lot of people that can learn from that and need to learn from that.
Yeah.
Black and white.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
and everybody, not just even black and white, everybody. But they have a chance to try to make some differences. Are they able to reach out and try to prove themselves on these? I think this is critical to his presidency, that he really follows up on that one thing, right there among others.
Yeah.
But that's a very important thing that he follows up. I think Ben Carson needs to be a big part of that equation. If they can come up with some good ideas, and I know this hurts you.
No, it's
I
not
mean,
that.
not hurt you, not
I'm
hurt
trying
you.
to. I'm
That's
trying
not
to. I'm
the
trying
word
to wrap.
I'm
I'm
looking
trying to wrap my brain around it for one reason. Trump is generally hated in the black community, and Ben Carson is generally hated in the
Right.
black community. So I will say, there's an old saying, don't kill the messenger. The problem is, and I know this is going to be a harsh analogy, but if David Duke is saying the right thing, it's David Duke saying it, and are you going to hear it if it's coming from a person that you don't trust on that level? And that's my worry. Because Trump would have to do some profound things to help the African American community in order to gain their trust. And trust me, any president, I profoundly wish and hope that they do make those profound inroads towards the community because it's so needed. But until you see that type of overture being done, not talked about, done, and even if you do it, get shitted on, and you keep doing it. See, that's the kind of thing that's going to need to happen because he's going to get shitted on because they're not going to believe.
They're not going to give him the time of day. The media will give him the time of day. He will have to be very diligent and stick to it. But that's what a leader would do.
I have a fundamental issue with this because I honestly thought John Lewis was wrong in his comments and started something that did not need to be started, to be perfectly honest. And to say that you are going to not attend an inauguration because you don't believe it's a legitimate presidency, I find to be insulting. I believe at some point you set aside your personal differences and believe in the institutions.
Yeah.
And the peaceful transfer of power has forever been the hallmark of this country.
Right, true.
And I find that relatively repulsive, to be perfectly honest, that people are skipping the inauguration just because they don't like the president. I don't like almost any president.
But the
my
thing
God,
is,
I would
though,
still love to go to inaugurations.
Now, I will say,
I think if you're an elected official, it is your obligation to go and set a precedent that says this is how we transfer power in this country. Right, wrong, or indifferent, like him, not like him, this is what we do, and this is what makes us better than you. You know?
I agree with that. I totally agree with that. And I don't necessarily agree with what Lewis said. But
which is where
Trump's
I was about to
reaction to that, instead of being the bigger person or whatever you want to say, two wrongs don't make a right, whatever you want to say, there's a certain way as the incoming president that you maybe should have addressed that.
Listen, do I think he's a moron? Of course. Everybody knows that. I think he's
But instead of letting it ride out, because people would have been upset about what he said, but instead Trump had to do his Trump thing and pissed everybody off. So they're not focusing on what was said that was wrong about not attending the inauguration.
Because there's this notion in America that, oh man, every white candidate has to somehow bend over backwards and reach out to the black community and yada yada. I'm like, well, no, there should be a compromise. They should both reach out to each other, and that doesn't happen. That does not happen at all.
No, it doesn't.
It is what people want is for a bunch of white politicians to kowtow to the African American community and give them all kinds of shit just to go, hey, I'm on your side, look at me, I'm not racist. Like, no, that's not the way this country should be moving forward. It should be a mutual meeting in the middle and discussion, and I don't think there's any responsibility for
and have
people
a serious discussion about it. Being home all weekend, I didn't go to the office, I didn't work, very rare for me. I actually I sat down and did some research, if you give me a couple seconds here. And for the most part, when Obama was elected in 2008, they had millions and millions of people showed up. I mean, it was just a phenomenal show for the inauguration. There was hardly, I don't know if there was any arrest or there was hardly any arrest.
I don't know if there were any.
I think there was no arrest. I think it's what I read.
Yeah.
It was very peaceful. Mm-hmm. It was a coming together. The Republicans lost, and the Republicans lost, and then they really did a very peaceful transition.
Yeah.
Which is what we just brought up.
Yeah.
Now we go to Trump's election, and we got Disrupt J20 out there, who have had a training session at an American university about how to disrupt the whole procedure. They will protest, and they go Google it up and look at it.
Yeah.
And I didn't just do one site; I went to many sites. I went to Mother Jones, and I went to very liberal sites to see what they had to say about it. I find that very troublesome. They're going to crash they got what they call the deplorable ball, which is kind of in its own right kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing, and I don't know that I agree with the title of that.
That's kind of
but it is kind of funny.
It is kind of funny, but there's a bunch of anti-capitalists that are going to march on Logan Circle. All right, damage expected. They're anarchy. They're going to bring in regular police and National Guard, thousands of them, to promote security from all over the nation. Mm-hmm.
All right. Then on the other side, now we got the bikers for Trump coming in that say they're going to form a wall of meat,
That
quote
just
unquote,
sounds
a
disgusting.
That sounds horrible.
of meat
Sounds
to
like
protect
the
citizens planning on attending the inauguration. Now, these are a lot of the same bikers that have protected the funerals from the Westboro
Right.
people
Right.
and things like this. So,
Yeah.
they're not necessarily the Hell's Angels rolling in to,
Exactly.
do their thing. These are mostly vets and that type of people, and they're there to try to keep the peace in somewhat, and hopefully it does stay that. I have my doubts. I think this will go a little bit crazy.
Yeah, I don't think that's
Well,
the
and
right
And
you know,
thing
then,
to do.
hang on, I got one more. And then you got the Women's Protest March.
But that's tomorrow. That's not.
Well, this is going to
during
go
the
on. That has
inauguration.
really nothing to do with the inauguration. It's just something that I noticed, okay, as I was going through things. They're going to protest in all 50 states and 30 other countries. So this
Yep,
this
it's
is a
a
big thing, and they
worldwide
have
event.
some legitimate things. But what did 200 progressive groups come together for this? And men are welcome to join. One of the wants are legal abortion, and this is their major platforms: legal abortion, environment, prisoner rights, voting rights, free press, affordable health care, gun safety, racial and gender equality. Wait, there's too many R's in that
Gender
for
equality.
an East Coast guy. Thank you. And then a higher minimum wage. There are things in there that I look at and I go, they're here in some form or another. You're taking a subject and just kind of beating it to death in some ways. I understand where
I can't even get
you're
into
at,
that.
but I guarantee my wife, I wish she would have come tonight, would have had some enlightening views on this.
I got a couple of things.
Well, I'm involved in our women's group at work, so I'm just going to say no, we're not equal yet. Most of that list. Now, Chris may treat the women that work for him differently. You may treat the women that work for you differently, but globally, no. Women are not.
I'm scared of my wife now.
You're scared of your wife because she can beat you with a pen.
Right.
But you're not. Women's equal rights are much different. And Chris, I know you feel completely. We've had that conversation about
I'm going to make one point.
Workplace pain.
such a strong woman, or whatever.
I'm
But
going to make a quick point, and this is the only thing that bothers me about it. Be glad where you live. You live in America, because in the Muslim countries in particular,
but that's why it's a global event.
90% of Muslim women's are
It's
sexually or
not
have their
just
clitorises
Muslim
removed.
countries. Yeah, I get that.
That to me.
But that's what
is the
this
greatest
women's.
thing.
But that's what this is about. It's a global. It's a global event. It's global awareness. It's not just.
I don't have a problem with that.
But you know what? That's why, yes, American women started it for a global event. So yes, we can do that. We can speak up and say we want this to be a global
you have
event
that
because
freedom.
we have the freedom to do that.
And I'm
that
all,
doesn't
I'm
mean
all
that
about
we're
that
equal.
empowerment. I am all about that
Yeah.
empowerment. And but they need to realize. I want the American women to realize that this is your standard. This is what you need to do. You need to rise up, not against some of the things that go on here so much, but the other countries.
Well,
Remember,
it started
I'm
though
well-traveled.
because of
I've been
the
all
things
over the
that
world.
Trump has said. That's how it started, and what Congress is wanting to do with making abortion illegal, not having birth control, all of that stuff. It affects every single woman. So
Absolutely.
it's not. I mean, we're in America, and that will affect us. So it's
Listen, a lot of the stuff he says is just crap. I mean, it's already the Supreme Court's already ruled on it. He can't make a law that overturns it. You'd have to do a constitutional amendment to overturn that law.
that has to be
never
approved by the
happen.
Supreme Court. Which if
Actually not. The Supreme Court has already weighed in and said abortion is legal. States are doing everything they can to restrict it in certain states, but as a matter of federal law, it is settled federal law. Now, to overturn that federal law, you would have to do a constitutional amendment, which is a brutal
Never
process
passed.
that would never happen.
Yeah, 2/3 of the states.
Well,
It's-
I'm
it's-
going to say
it's
never
just-
say never because too many times people say that'll never happen and it does.
I will tell you
and
every-
Trump
Get elected.
is a perfect example of that.
Listen, it's one thing to say something, and it's one thing to know what the hell you're talking about, and if you can actually do it. And half of what he said, he could never actually do because it's patently illegal, and he would get his ass kicked out of the
Nor does
office.
he
Wait,
really
hold on a
intend
second.
to.
Patrick.
You have to-
I want
yeah,
to bring us back to the original topic, and it was what was stated on Twitter, like it or not, and people that are not attending the inauguration, like it or not, that's what this country's built on.
Sure.
It's built
They have
on
the
the
freedom to
allowed
do it.
dissent.
Agreed.
It's built on allowed dissent, and if you're uncomfortable with dissent, you're in the wrong spot. That's what this country was
Well,
built
and
on.
I
That's what
think
that's
there's
what-
a difference between
Well, I agree.
peaceful protesting
Don't get me
and
wrong,
rioting.
nonviolent
you know,
is the way to
yes.
go, by all means. You should not really have to hurt somebody to get your point across. You're
Yeah.
clearly doing it wrong at that point. But the fact that everyone's getting upset that people aren't attending, honestly, it frustrates me, and I don't like it. But that's what this country was built on, is the allowed dissent. We are allowed to disagree with our establishment. And we're allowed to do it
agree.
in a lot of ways, in almost any way we want to, as long as it doesn't reach violence.
I just think it is a.
I mean, like I said, I agree
It's
with
a
you
respect-
entirely, and
when
I
you're an
disagree with
elected
the statements that
official,
were made.
you need to be putting forth an example. And I would say
Well, that-
his entire life has been.
But the
a
same thing
phenomenal
goes for
example.
Trump. He should not be allowed to rant back. He should be the bigger man because he's the POTUS.
That's why I think
what
it
I
was
said.
born.
P-O-E-T-S, whatever. But the point is, someone calls him Cheeto Jesus, and he goes into a Twitter rant about it. I mean, that right there tells you that this is something that both of those folks shouldn't have engaged in.
Completely
Well,
agree.
Right.
I
But
agree.
when it really comes down to it, who should be the bigger man? Who should set the best example? It should be the highest elected official.
POTUS.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't care
Which
what
I
anyone
think
says
is
to him.
the
He,
issue that
he has
people
to set the
have.
example, and he's setting
Yeah.
a very dangerous example in a lot of ways.
I think
Yeah.
Both sides
I think
are, don't
they're
get me
both
wrong,
setting
but
examples.
exactly, both sides
And
are setting dangerous
it's-
examples.
They're very bad. And
As long as it doesn't
dividing.
come to violence, it's allowed.
It's just further.
We cannot like it all day long.
It's further in the divide, and
It is.
I'm a
It
big
is. I
believer
totally
that
agree.
to live in this country, you have to put up with all kinds of shit that you
Yeah.
hate.
Yeah.
And people have. I mean, I'm a believer that you should burn the flag if you want to. Go ahead. Like
That's
that's.
what I'm
part
glad
of
you're-
it.
Well,
I'm
that's
glad you're back,
actually
buddy.
in the, I mean, isn't that
I
part of
appreciate
the,
it.
you can
I
do
really
that?
am.
It's
I'm glad
free
you're
speech.
back.
That's
free
what
speech.
separates us.
But,
I've been
I
to
find
many
it
other
repulsive,
countries.
but it is
I've
what it
traveled
is.
to. I've spent a fair bit of time in Russia. Gavorite Paruski. So it's you go to places that you see.
Anybody out there
completely
in
different
podcast
situation.
land that knows what he just said, leave that in comments because
Okay.
I want to know what that was.
That's
just for
basically
me.
asking if you speak Russian in a formal sense. But
Okay.
yeah, it's
In a formal
But
sense.
you go, yeah. There's languages that have a formal U and a non-formal U. It's,
No, let's go.
yeah, but the main thing is you go to other places. We live in one of the best places. We live in the best place in the world,
Yeah.
and a lot of those things we take for granted. I mean, we have in a lot of cases there's services to take care of us when the proverbial fit hits the shan. Lots of things. The system is designed to protect most of the people, not all of them, and there are some things to work on, but. We got here and we became a country because we left other places that did this crap.
Yep.
We don't need to fall into that same trap.
Do you
Just
not worry
200
about-
some
And
odd
that's
years
the big
later.
worry, and that's what I'm trying to protect against. I want us to continue to be a first-rate country.
Yes.
I don't want us to be a second-rate country.
Part
I
of that
certainly
is-
don't
is
want us to
not-
be a third-rate
But
country.
part of it is not letting your own citizens troll you, other countries troll you. I mean, you shouldn't. Both sides shouldn't go off on Twitter rants. Both sides should take the higher road and say, "Got it. We disagree."
Yeah.
Everybody
Okay.
out there, don't fight.
Okay. With that, I think now we're going to pivot towards something I think we can all agree on.
Yeah.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. As today is Martin Luther King Day, where the day we officially celebrate Martin Luther King's birthday. I just want to go around the table and just get some brief statements or anecdotes about King or his legacy, and how you feel that it has affected your life personally or the country as a whole. A lot of people have said that he is possibly the greatest American we've produced, and I would tend to agree with that.
I'm with you on that. Can I read a quick paragraph? I got several paragraphs I'd like to read through this about the letter from Birmingham, 1966. Mm-hmm.
Hey, what's going on, podcasters? Let's acknowledge the good friends of the Loft Party Podcast. The Majestic Restaurant and Pendergast Club, carrying on Kansas City's tradition of great food and great jazz, 931 Broadway in Kansas City, Missouri. The J. Rieger Kansas City Distillery, whiskey, gin, vodka. That is, oh so good. And friend of the podcast and panelist, Lane Boland, managing to keep the podcast going. Apparently wealthy or not. Now onto our regularly scheduled program.
And you can hear his cadence, his beautiful oratory cadence in this. I will try to do some justice. More basically, I am in Birmingham because injustice is here. Let me follow. He's writing to a fellow clergyman that is questioning his resistance that maybe it should be better done through negotiation than it was through action, peaceful action. Or basically, I'm in Birmingham because injustice is here. Just as the prophets of the 8th century BC left their villages and carried their "Thus said the Lord" far beyond the boundaries of their hometowns. And just as the Apostle Paul left his village of Taurus and carried the gospel of Jesus Christ to the far corners of the Greco-Roman world, so am I compelled to carry the gospel of freedom beyond my own hometown. Like Paul, I must constantly respond to Macedonian call for aid. That is profound.
Very. Very indeed.
And I got paragraph after paragraph and paragraph in here where the man has expressed himself enough to make you go, that is amazing. And the one thing I really got from the letter is his morality. His talk of just laws and unjust laws. Just laws have morality. Unjust laws have no morality. Segregation was an unjust law. To put a sign in your business saying that you do not serve me is an unjust law. And this is what he was about. He was all about just laws. We have to have our just laws. America was set up on a religious just law. And I think one thing as America has gotten away from is that we do have that religious background that sets our morality. And it was a Christian religious background. And we have learned to turn around and accept all religions as a part of this, and which I'm sure he was part of. He talks quite fondly of his Jewish brothers. He talks quite fondly of the white clergy, even though he felt that modern clergy was not quite understanding exactly where he had to be. He had some problems with them because they really felt like negotiation was the way, and he felt like peaceful demonstrations were the way to go. So the more you read on Dr. King, and you guys have heard me say this in many podcasts, that you look at the measure of the man, and I agree with Mario. I mean, I think he was one of our greatest men that ever walked the American soils, and he deserves all that credit.
Yeah, absolutely. To add, there are people like Dr. King that stand out. You've got Gandhi, King, and it doesn't matter what religion they come from, where they were. They've all stood up for very similar principles under very similar circumstances. And the things that they've done to transform humanity as a whole, not just the country they were from or the religion they served, have been absolutely profound, amazing, and we will hopefully see something like this again at some point in time. But until then, he is the benchmark that you are held.
I feel like the good doctor has taught me a lot about candor, about maintaining a level head, at least in the sense that the way that he led, I would say, his half of the civil rights movement, as opposed to the way that Malcolm X tried to try to accomplish things through organized violence, civil disobedience. That I feel like that he did a lot in regards for providing a basis of legitimacy, very hard to question legitimacy for the civil rights movement, and the precedent that he set with avoiding violence to the nth degree is something to definitely be followed and be encompassed.
Shows it can be done.
Yes.
Can I read one more? This is last paragraph of the letter. Okay. He says before 3 paragraphs, for never have I written a letter so long, but he has plenty of time on his hands, basically. I hope this letter finds you in strong faith. I also hope that the circumstances will soon make it possible for me to meet each of you, not as an integrationist or a civil rights leader, but as a fellow clergyman and a Christian brother. Let's all hope that the dark clouds of racial prejudice will soon pass away and the deep fog of misunderstanding will be lifted from our fear-drenched communities. And in some not too distant tomorrow, the radiant stars of love and brotherhood will shine over our great nation with all their scintillating beauty.
That is beautiful.
It's like I said, the man was phenomenal.
Brain mass?
The thing that sticks in my head is just that the way he was able to speak and communicate to everybody. I mean, everyone that was around. I mean, and to this day, we're still talking about it, and that's amazing. We went and watched that film, Hidden Figures, and the thing that I was thinking about, takeaway, there was a part where he asked one of the ladies, he said, "Where do you go for 40 minutes a day?" Mm-hmm. And she said that, there's not a bathroom for her in this building. She has to walk half a mile to go to I believe it was the colored ladies' restroom, which was terrible. And the next scene shows the guy tearing down that sign. He said, we're not dealing with that here. And it was interesting because I was thinking, it was one of those where he's like, we're trying to put a man in space. Like, we're not going to deal with this crap that we shouldn't be worried about anyway. Right. And
we're not gonna make her walk a half a mile to the restroom, rain or shine.
Like, it's petty bullshit that no one needs to be dealing with anyway when we're trying to do something much bigger.
So much bigger, so much greater.
And it would almost be nice to have something like that to just sort of unify everyone and say, hey, remember, we're all on the same team trying to do some awesome stuff. And there isn't anything right now, and there isn't someone right now that can speak to everyone in that way, and that's sad.
Isn't our fear that we've gotten away from that?
I think that is our fear.
That's my big fear, that we've lost that message.
So have you seen that cartoon where it's got the boat and it's sinking, and it's got these 3 guys in the front saying, I'm glad that's not our end of the boat.
Yeah.
And you know what? And unfortunately, I think that has kind of become America. And everybody's just concerned with their end of the boat, and as long as their end of the boat isn't sinking, it doesn't matter if the rest of the boat is sinking. Not realizing that if any part of the boat is sinking, the whole boat is sinking.
Yes, for the greater good. We have to get back to the greater good of America. It's not about us and them. It's about the greater good of our wonderful country. And like Patrick's traveled overseas, I know that you've been overseas. You've worked overseas. A lot of us have been, and a lot of us haven't been in tourist areas by any stretch of the imagination.
Good. Yep.
So we see what the third world country is, and we see how these people live. Wake up, people. Wake up, podcast land. Because give it up, honey, because it is unbelievable what you have here if you're willing to reach out and grab it. And I live that with a passion. Because, and then of course, I've been poor. I've been dirt poor. I had to eat red beans and rice because that's all I could afford. and you can get a whole bunch of it and cook a whole bunch of it, and it'll last you a long time. Maybe if you're lucky, you get a ham hock. But, you know, you can always rise up in this country. Anybody can rise up in this country. I don't care who you are or how downtrodden and downpressed you are. If you have that desire, nowadays, because of people like Dr. King, we all have that opportunity, even though it's going to be a lot harder for some than it is for others.
Chris?
You know, honestly, I feel fairly strongly that I don't even have an appropriate voice on this. I don't understand the experiences that African Americans go through. I know that it was 300 years of systematically getting the living shit kicked out of you, economically, physically, in every way. I can't imagine the strength of character that it takes to be able to make that change and do it in the way that he did it. But honestly, like, I've never had anything like that happen to me. I can appreciate it at an intellectual level,
Right.
and acknowledge that, you know, I do believe he's one of the greatest people that's ever been an American, for sure, if not one of the greatest people in the world.
Right?
But let's be honest, like, I don't have that experience. I can only appreciate it from a distance. And I was lucky. I mean, I met Coretta Scott King a couple times and was lucky enough to talk with her. And even after that, I still know I don't have an appreciation of that, you know. And so for me, it always comes down to theoretical arguments to some degree. Like, it's very difficult because I look at the things that are happening today and really honestly wonder, if he were alive right now, what would the message be? Would it be? I mean, like literally, he was fighting for, my God, to be able to sit down at a restaurant and eat, to be able to buy a house, to be able to vote.
Right.
And now we're talking about, do I need to show an ID when I show up to vote, or do I not? You know, like, I have to show an ID to get on a plane. You know, so you wonder, like, it feels now it's like grasping at straws to a certain degree, and so you don't know. And this is part of the problem, I think, on how to create a more unified country is, I don't know really what the issues are. I think they just get blown out of proportion. It's easy to say, easier, I would say, I'm fighting for the right to vote than it is to argue about the specific rules of how you vote. Like, that just seems a little nebulous to me. And so I honestly wonder what the message would be today. But I mean, clearly, like, you would be stupider than Trump if you tried to deny that he was one of the greatest human beings that's probably ever walked this planet in terms of the accomplishments that he made. Yeah. It's just, I know that I don't have the experience and the background to fully appreciate all that. Yeah. And so for that reason, I just go, listen, I can admire you in every possible way without being able to share the same pain and suffering and everything I say you went through.
Well,
just,
you know,
part of it to me.
I guess, you know, I will reserve my comments for last. So that brings us to Ms.
Well, I think kind of tag on what Chris said, you know, it's hard, and we had the conversation New Year's when we were having dinner. We were talking about driving through the South and how, you know, I don't remember who said it, but it was basically like, you know, oh, there's no issue really with that. And I'm like, well, there is.
Actually, that was me.
Okay.
I did say that.
And so
I didn't see an issue anymore, and I might have been erroneous in saying that.
Well, but I think that's kind of the point I'm talking about is, and we talked about it that night, we're never going to be able, you can empathize, but you're never going to interpret a look, hear a conversation, feel that fear that Mario would feel. So it's, you know, it kind of goes along the same thing. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Dr. King says this in his letter. And he's talking about the moderate whites and even some of his Jewish brothers, as he put them, that while I appreciate your brotherhood, and I appreciate your help, it's hard to understand where the Negro stands as far as what he has to deal with on a daily basis. It's hard for you to put yourself in my shoes, no matter how hard you may try.
Right.
Well, and I think that a lot of, and I'll just generalize it, a lot of people say, oh, that's not how it is, or I don't see it that way. Well, you don't, because you're white.
Never been.
You know, you're never going to see it that way. So you can't disregard the way somebody feels, you know, because you can't tell somebody they're wrong for feeling a certain way. You can try to understand it, and with that knowledge, either change the way you are or help change the way other people see
Bingo.
it.
That's the most important thing right there.
But you can never, to me, it's like you telling me I should feel a certain way about a woman's right, or, you know, me telling Mario, well, that's not right.
Well,
But he sees it differently than I do.
my only argument is that there are people in the world nowadays who are working a lot harder to understand this. And I think one of the things that failed in this last election is saying that people didn't understand this. I think it was a huge failure that there are people out there that understand this. Even if they're not black, they do have maybe not a total understand what's like in the shoes, but they have empathy for it.
They do, but it's always
and they
the
are
people
trying
that
to
don't
make
that
a
speak.
difference. And they're trying to come to those grips and understanding and reach across the aisles. And when they're told that by a certain group of people that we don't want anything to do with you, well, that's kind of hard to take. I'm reaching out. I'm trying hard here. I'm working
But
at
I
this.
think that it is a two-way street. You have to be willing to have difficult conversations with people openly,
Yes.
and say, you know, this is why what you just did. I mean, there's people that I work with
Without being
that
shouted down.
they're all of their, you know, we have teams. Maybe they're the only African American on the team, and even during the election, I mean, you really have to not completely silence your voice, but you should be aware of the things that you're saying and how anyone that hears that would interpret it, and vice versa.
But then again, that is almost in a business situation. Yes, on a personal level, Mario and I can sit there and talk about things. We are able to have any conversation possible because we respect each other and try to honor each other's opinion, even if we don't fully agree with it. But at least we're trying to come to a common understanding of where he is. I need to understand how he feels.
Yeah.
I can appreciate the progress that was made. I think it is virtually impossible to say that purposefully and legally we held an entire class of people down for 300 years. It's been less than 2 generations. And that now it literally reminds me of beating the living shit out of somebody at recess and then helping them up and going, see, we're all good now. We're all fine. I'm like, nah, it doesn't work that way. And we did a documentary once, and I'll totally turn it down. I'm sorry, but it hit home for me in a weird way. It was, we got paid by the Jewish group out south by the Sprint Center or whatever. They paid us to make a documentary about how Jews and blacks worked together during the civil rights for housing.
Right.
And so we were interviewing all these different people, and we would interview some of the Jewish people, and they were like, well, I really wanted to join this country club, and they said no, and stuff like that. And then you sit down with like Emmanuel Cleaver did it, and he's like, well, I really wanted to go and eat a sandwich at this place, and they told me no, go eat it back out in the alley and get the hell out of here, and you can't stay with everybody else. And I'm like, it was not the same thing. There's no possible way to put yourself in your shoes, and I can't even pretend. I can only appreciate the magnitude of the change that he made. because it was literally 300 years of and it still goes on to a certain degree now, of systematic holding people down.
Yeah.
And you're talking 2.5 generations or 2 generations, and
We make some
you
progress.
expect an economic basis in place. It's not there. You expect, I mean, people go, oh, why is that strong? Well, for 300 years, there was no economic basis to build on. Everybody else was allowed to build an economic basis. They weren't. You know, there's a million other reasons, but that is a large one to me. And so, I don't know.
Yeah.
And we should real quick. We should celebrate the progress that Dr. King made.
Oh, absolutely.
That's my
Because
point.
because there are many people of the African American culture that have achieved great heights, not just in government either. I mean, in all levels.
In
They've
all
become
sectors,
CEOs of companies and everything else. And you look at this, and doctors and lawyers and everything, they have achieved that. Now, there's a certain amount of blacks and whites, even poor whites. The poor people have somewhat been left behind, and that's a failure. But that's a failure that we have to work on. We've got the other part done. Now let's go work on the other failure.
Yeah, I do believe that. I remember growing up, and I've said this the past 2 or 3 years, and I'm gonna, in the next couple of days, I'm gonna go out and look for it and buy it. I remember Martin Luther King holiday every year, be off from school, and I'd be, because my mom usually had to work, and so I was at my grandparents' house, and I remember sitting there watching this old documentary that they used to play on. They used to play it every year, and it seemed like it was on TV all day on, like ABC or whatever it was called, Eyes on the Prize, and it just was this full day almost documentary about the civil rights movement and and all that. And I remember sitting there with my grandparents and watching my grandfather, who was probably the strongest of character man I've ever known. With the silent tears coming down his face because listening to some of the playback of the King speeches, and it really has always sat with me that like you say, Chris, we're not that many generations removed. Like my grandparents moved up from Mississippi and lived that life, that I personally couldn't fathom living, but in lies the progress, that my grandparents definitely lived that life, and my mother, her generation dealt with prejudice, but not the oppressive violence, but they dealt with very blatant prejudice. And to my generation, where I've definitely had my run-ins and issues with racial situations, but I've for the most part ran across good people of all colors, and we've been able to have these types of conversations, and it always brings me back to, Dr. King's speech when, he says, his dream is that one day his children can play with, little white children, and that we are at a better, more unified place, and yes, we are definitely, in a better, more unified place than we were a generation ago, certainly 2 generations ago. And yes, we have quite some ways to go. But without the courage and conviction of Martin Luther King Jr., and not that it's his birthday, but even a Malcolm X, who fought differently. But without these men who had this level of courage and conviction, we wouldn't be sitting here,
discussing this amicably.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, you wouldn't have, a table with that's mixed race and gender, and having a discussion that, and we don't have to go have it in some seedy part of town because we couldn't come up here to a Pendergast club and have a drink and a smoke and discuss it together. So, I see the progress, and I also see how much more progress there needs to be done. But I will say that as long as we're able to do what my toast says, we'll be all right. And with that, I'm going to end this podcast in the way I end all podcasts, and that is with the toast that kind of started it all for me, and that is to good times with good people.